Good evening.
And welcome to ANGST, Doing OK's coming-of-age podcast. Adults never get snarling teens, but we'll help them try one story at a time. I'm Dan.
I'm Caitlin.
And I'm Keith.
And this is Moogie.
Hi, Moogie.
Hello.
And it's important that I know what to say next, which is tune in every other Tuesday at 12 p.m. Eastern on youtube.com/doingok. That's the word doing and the letters O and K. Or podcast services around the world as we discuss coming-of-age stories via TV, movies, games, and more.
This week, we're watching Ginger Snaps.
The seminal coming-of-age horror film from Kenyatta Who. It's about a werewolf girl and her period. I saw this movie back in my college days, but you guys have not seen it before.
But now we have.
Now you have, hopefully, or otherwise this is a weird podcast. So, Caitlin, what did you think of this movie?
So, I have a lot of thoughts, but I will say that I had a fun time watching it. I almost gave up on it.
She almost did.
Well, okay, we were like 10 minutes in, and I was like, I'm going to give this another 10 minutes, and then we probably will skip to something else, but we ended up watching the whole thing. I don't know how that happened.
I think it got better is the answer.
I think it got better.
It got better, and also we got used to it.
Yeah.
Yes.
The intro, yes, it was stylized, but it was very awkward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I understand what they were going for and that they were going for something. It could have been, I think it took them a while to get into their groove as well as it took us a while to just understand their groove.
I will say, as someone who had seen it previously, I don't personally feel that way because I went in knowing what I was expecting, and I feel like I don't actually think the beginning is that much different than the rest of it. I just think you were thrown off guard.
Yeah, I mean, definitely that's part of it.
Yeah.
I just think as an intro, it's it had strengths and weaknesses. Yeah. It really did let us know the tone of it.
Yeah.
But I think it kind of came in
strong.
A little too strong, maybe.
Yeah.
And also, I feel like
it was so much like, this is what this is.
Yeah. Well, it actually...
Do we want to talk about what this vibe is?
Yeah, okay. So should I give a quick, a 5-second plot summary?
Sure.
Because, so we went into a lot of detail last week with I was going to say The Walking Dead. The Wonder Years.
Walking Dead, Wonder Years.
Same thing.
We went into a lot of plot detail last time. With this one, it's really about seeing it, I feel like, because the plot is pretty simple. It's... there are these two sisters. They're both sort of macabre and outsiders. Neither of them has hit puberty yet, has had their first period.
They're 15 and 16. Okay. Ginger's 16.
Okay.
And Bridget's 15.
Okay. So they are outsiders. They are obsessed with death. They talk about how they want to die together and stuff like that. Meanwhile, there's all these mysterious dog destruction things occurring. Death of dogs.
Okay, don't look.
Mookie. There's a mysterious creature attacking them. So they want to mess with one teenager who's treating them badly by stealing their dog and making it look like it was killed by the monster. But Ginger has her first period, and it attracts the werewolf, which bites or scratches her. It ends up getting accidentally run over by a drug dealer. We'll get back to drug dealer Joe later. Then Ginger snaps, and she becomes a werewolf slowly throughout the course of the movie, and it's a parallel for puberty. She starts growing hair and feeling horny and all this fun puberty stuff.
She thought she wanted sex. She really just wanted to rip things to pieces.
Are the two things different?
No, I can tell you that.
If you're doing it right. And so, basically the whole story here, the very streamlined version of this, is that her sister Bridget is trying to stop Ginger from going too far and murdering...
Trying to save her and the town, basically.
Yeah. And so it's all about her ending, ultimately having to defeat her sister to save everybody else. Yes. And we have the most important other side characters are the mom, who's a bit of a loon, and the drug dealer named Sam, who ends up sort of
the Van Helsing character.
He befriends Bridget and is the one who gives her all the knowledge and exposition she needs.
And potions.
Yeah, exactly. So getting back to the beginning. So the beginning, the part I do maybe agree with you that the dialogue's maybe the weakest at the beginning, and especially because they like jump right into like the idea of a suicide pact, which isn't even really part of the thing. Like, it makes it seem like
it comes back at the end, but I feel like they should have built to that.
Yeah, I agree.
It's an easy way to set the mood without jumping in right to that. Well, I think they should have get a little bit more of the characters before getting that far.
The thing about the beginning that I do really like personally is I think that the opening titles with these, so they do this whole slideshow for art class, I think.
Yes.
Which is all these shots of it looking like they died. So like shots of them being impaled or run over and stuff like that. And they're doing these photography things and these setups. To me, I think that was a really interesting and it felt unique way of setting up both the tone and the characters.
Right.
It gives them like some sort of both their personality but also their abilities, and it's used really well throughout the rest of the movie when it's like, oh, you know, like their parents start seeing weird things happen and they assume it's just part of their...
It's sort of a smoke screen for the real crimes and murders and whatever, because it's like, oh, those two girls always off doing their like Halloween stunts.
Their chicanery.
Oh, we find, disembodied fingers in the yard. Oh, it's,
Yeah.
I will say that I think that the movie made a lot of really smart cinematic decisions, which I thought was really interesting for... It was a good juxtaposition for how kitschy the whole thing is. Which shows how, I don't know, how much fun the creators had with it.
Yeah. It's the kind of movie that like continually straddles the line between terrible and good back and forth throughout scenes.
Which makes it just fun.
Yeah.
I'm not going to say it's good or bad. It's fun.
I personally really enjoy the movie. I certainly see that there are times... I mean, it's honestly... It's sort of awkward sometimes how much the actors, I feel like, switch between like, oh, they're good, and then I'm like, oh no, they're not good. And because I feel like generally speaking, they're pretty solid actors.
I agree
so
with
as
that.
well,
Yeah, but there are just a few lines and things which I'm like, maybe partially is the directing and the actual dialogue. But...
I think, I don't think the acting bad. I don't think the acting bad. I do think some of the direction at the beginning was overly kitschy.
Yeah.
Whether it was intentional or not, I don't know. But I do think it went a little too far at the beginning, especially.
Yeah. I think it was going for like off kilter, and that is incredibly subjective about how much is too off kilter.
I mean, they really stuck to their metaphor.
Yeah.
Which, like, I can applaud.
Yeah, so let's talk about sort of the message here and the sort of types of topics that they hit on. So, I mean...
Puberty is evil and women are evil.
Obviously.
Yeah.
These are the
so I'm
things.
not saying that there's a good message, but I don't think that they were trying to have a good or bad message.
Well, that's the thing. Is I don't even know if there's a message as much as it's like engaging with themes.
Yeah.
I do think there was one line which is the only thing I think that points to a definitive message. I agree that for the most part it is engaging with themes. Yeah. But when they're burying the body of the bully teenager, what she's saying, like, oh, they never think girls do this stuff, so we're fine. We're only either like the sluts or the virgin next door or whatever it is. Yeah. So, they're not going to catch us. Yeah. So I think that does speak to there's some sort of backroom message.
They're definitely talking about female sexuality, how society sees women. And I mean, I think a good example of that too is after Ginger has sex with the jock guy, she comes back and she's like, "Oh, he's a hero. I'm just a lay." And like, people will talk about it. And Bridget's like, "Well, we can talk about it too." And they're like, "Well, that doesn't matter. It only matters what he says." And then there's so much talk about, they assume that Sam wants to have sex with or even rape Bridget because he's a man, he's older, and all men are the same, and the mom talks about like what men actually want. And then the other thing that I think they also hit on that's important is the idea that when the mom finds out that her daughters are killing people, she says,
she's not even mad.
Yeah. So that's an important piece. But also she says everybody's gonna blame me. Yeah. Sort of tying into the whole idea of like it's all on the mothers to protect the kids from becoming that way or whatever.
With the theme of the fact that turning into a werewolf and turning into a monster is a metaphor for puberty, and that's when Ginger starts turning, that's when she starts getting more sexualized. I say more because even before she got her period, she was being sexualized in the movie.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that at no point really is Bridget very sexualized.
Yeah.
There, other than the one line of her sister thinking that Sam, the drug dealer, wants to have sex with her.
Well, that's more than one line, and there's actually a bunch of guys talking about, oh, both sisters are sluts and blah blah blah.
That's true.
But her body is never looked at as a
yeah. I guess never sexualized wasn't the right way to put it, but I don't know how to word what I'm saying.
Yeah, I get where you're coming from.
She was not physically objectified by the media, but rather by the characters within the media only.
Yeah. That's probably the best way to put it. I don't know, I find that interesting because I think that even Bridget falls into a lot of the tropes of like, she's a virgin, she's prepubescent, or even when she does finally get infected. Yeah. I don't know, at no point is she treated the same way Ginger's treated.
Yeah, I mean, the thing that's that I do think sort of upsets the usual trope in some ways is it's like, Ginger also was a virgin, like, he was a virgin and then he was made into a victim before, and it's like, it's not like he had sex and then he was bitten by the werewolf or something like that.
Well, that's a great time to kind of pull in the Red Riding Hood thing.
Yeah.
So, yes, she didn't have sex, but if she got her period, she became fertile, thus an object of, sexualization. And so, Wolf, related to that, one interpretation of the Little Red Riding Hood story is that Red is the sort of like the menstruation, that's a sexualization of the character Red, and then the wolf is like the lustfulness.
Yeah, she goes into the woods and comes out a woman kind of thing. She deals with she loses her innocence by dealing with this whole experience.
And it's a transformative story. And it is sort of also, one interpretation again, is that it is sort of a warning story against sex and what's the word I'm looking for? Promiscuity.
Yeah.
So Bridget is 15 and Ginger is 16. Neither of them have had their period. Everyone kind of notes that talks about it, notes that that's kind of weird. The girls are okay with that and actually embrace that because they don't want to be normal. They don't want to grow up. They don't want to become what's expected.
And specifically, they don't want to be teenagers. They don't want to just become slaves to their hormones.
But the movie kind of, doesn't understand puberty because, so for lack of a better word, Ginger is acknowledged to have, be developed, more developed than a girl who hasn't had her puberty before would be. At one point during gym class, some of the guys talk about her rack and how she's the hotter of the sisters. Any girl who, especially who is late in her period, wouldn't look like that. It's just biologically.
Now, keep in mind, it's also the budget of the movie. They're casting these characters, they know what role she's going to play. Yeah. And again, they do kind of mix the werewolf and the vampire mythology a little bit. So
to Dan's point earlier when we were watching, they could have dressed her differently.
And also just not had that line.
Yeah.
Now they did definitely dress her differently. Whether it was enough of that, I don't know, but they definitely did.
Well, no. So what I was arguing is, because I agree with you that this feels like a weird plot decision to especially specifically call out her rack before she has her period. I think that it would have made a lot more sense to wait for that line to come after she had transformed and come out with these different clothes and kept her in the super baggy stuff the way that they did with Bridget until she had her period, so that you couldn't really see how her body was developed.
Right.
So obviously they're talking about how puberty is a monstrous time, and I like how they contrast what's happening with Ginger with she has sex with that jock, like we said, and then he sort of
infects him.
Yeah. We keep calling him a jock, but we haven't seen him be a jock.
I don't think he was a jock.
He's just some guy, I think. Right?
Okay. I mean, I guess he's on bleachers all the time. Is he not wearing a Letterman's jacket? Did I get to picture him?
I don't think he was. Maybe he might have been. I'm not going to confirm or deny.
Boy toy number 1.
But being on the bleachers, I think almost makes him even more not a jock.
Yeah, I suppose. Okay, boy toy number 1 gets infected with this STD.
His name was Jason McCarty.
Okay, cool. Jason. That's a cool name. So Jason was infected with this STD type thing, and then it shows his sort of monstrous puberty. with him bleeding, but also we were talking about the pimples.
Yeah,
kind
or
of
like
thing.
boils almost, but it's
Yeah.
like acne basically.
Yeah.
The way his tail kind of curled around him, it looked like a boner when he was like lying on the ground.
Yeah.
So like, I don't know, it's just kind of interesting how it's like, I wouldn't even say it's demonizing
No.
all of this.
It's just an allegory.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's an allegory, and it's about the chaos. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing. It is a coming of age allegory.
Well,
That's
and I think it's also about showing. It's like how you brought up earlier the whole thing about
the tail is hideous.
Yes.
Oh, it's so gross.
Yeah. Well, it's showing that it's scary and that it's about how having gone through that metamorphosis, how it changes how people perceive you.
Yeah, and specifically, like that it's grotesque. It's not like a fluffy wolf tail.
Yeah.
It's like a grotesque.
As
like,
much as I wish it
bald-
was.
It's like something that they're ashamed of. That's the biggest thing. It's like pulling in sort of that adolescent like shame of your own body as it's changing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
On a personal note of the monster and the grotesqueness and everything, I got my first period 666, so June 6th, 2006.
You're a special flower.
Which was just not cool. Like, I was 11, I was at a friend's birthday party, and I was like...
You were celebrating Satan.
we were playing Jeopardy, actually. At
same
one
thing.
point. I think I broke a window by accident.
Was it a mirror?
No, I broke a window. I don't know, there was some beam and whatever.
The beam of Satan?
No.
Broke a window with a
we were
beam
in an
of
attic
Satan?
and there was an actual beam and we were trying to lay down.
Oh, you were in the attic having your Satan ritual. That makes sense. Yep.
Yep, 11-year-old Caitlin, already a Satanist.
They start them young these days.
But yeah, so I don't know, like, for me at that time, it honestly did kind of seem like a little, like, because I made the, like, connection of 666 rather quickly because you had to write down, like, when it started.
Did you
like,
get a free calendar?
No. I did really like how Bridget was the one who was super into the idea of the calendar, but not just for, like, the idea of you had to write down your period and whatever, track it, but she was following the moon cycle, following Bridget's progression, when the next full moon was going to be.
Yeah. Well, it's definitely intrinsically makes sense to combine a period with werewolfism because it is that whole cyclical moon.
Yeah,
connection.
once a month.
Yeah. And I thought it was really cool how they had the shot of her sort of all the looming products of like, what do we do? Like, how do we
Womanhood.
deal? Yeah. And that kind of reminded me of when we were talking last week about like go buying your first condoms and stuff like that too. And all these various parts of coming of age that involve like these mythical objects that you don't quite understand until you're using them.
I don't actually remember the first time I bought like feminine hygiene products. I do remember the first time I used a tampon, which was at a friend's house. And basically I was just kind of looking at it like, I went into the bathroom, looked at it, didn't know what to do, didn't try anything, went back to my friend and I'm like, what do I do? And she's like, she stopped for a second and she's like, she went into the box and they actually have instructions on how to insert it in the box. And she just kind of shoves it at me and she's like, this tells you what to do. And then I went back in the bathroom. And I figured it out.
So Keith, I know you wanted to talk a little bit about the sort of more formal technical elements of the cinematography and pacing of the storytelling and all that stuff.
I think overall the cinematography actually was pretty good. I was very interested to see that it was actually on film, even though this came out in 2000, right?
Yeah.
And so not only was it on film, but it had a very classic film look. I don't know what it was or what they were shooting on, but like it almost looked like it could have been from the 70s or something. Like the way the film looked. They did a good job pacing the horror suspense with sort of like the casual mundane, like the soup cans falling on her when like the guy's getting smashed up against the door. The fact that most of the video they didn't show the monster or the acts of violence. It was all implied,
which was a great decision for a while.
I do think they suffered from the low budget with getting the costuming and all that and
IMDb
makeup.
thinks the same thing.
And I think if they held off just a little longer, they would have went a long way.
I
Or
honestly,
if it was just more in the shadows.
I mean, I know this is totally up for subjectivity, but like, I don't know that they ever needed her to actually become a wolf. And I think in some ways it might have been better if she never fully became a wolf, because
I think it would have been better if they had either A, cured her, or B, went through with the suicide pact.
Mm-hmm.
Or they were like going to go through with the suicide pact, but Bridget kind of like backed out at the last second.
Honestly, I think in my mind, she should have become the wolf, but they shouldn't have had it in such a way that there was somebody in a suit.
Yeah.
They should have had it animatronic or puppetry, like in Never Ending Story, like Gomorrah, where it was like coming out of the shadows, like you mentioned. So you have like a wall. So it's like a panel. So they don't have to show the jumping and the action shots. They can show those quicker and not linger on them.
They also just, I guess think in general, they spent too much time with her actually as a wolf.
Yeah.
But I'm just thinking, like, what is still looks good when you're on a low budget and you're doing not like special effects in that sense of like computer generated stuff, and it's just actually is costuming and animatronics and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's gonna look better when you're in an enclosed space with a lot of shadows, like they did have in some scenes, like the writhing. There was a close shot.
Yeah.
Or like I mentioned, like Gomorrah, that kind of thing.
I think that they felt like, I like, the way I was watching this movie, I felt like they thought that if we don't actually show the werewolf ever, it will feel like we cheaped out, or like people will be like feel like they like let down, they never actually saw it. And I personally, I could see why.
I like the mystery of it. Well, I think also if we never saw it, that would kind of help with the metaphor more in a way.
Yeah.
It'd be another take on it, that like, you know, there's this like mystery you don't really like.
Yeah.
When you're a teenager, you're just not going to understand it. You're not going to get it.
Yeah. I personally think that they should have done something where she gets to even more, like, the way she was right before she actually became a wolf. Make that up to, like, 11, right? Mm-hmm. And have it be that, like, once she becomes the wolf, she can't be saved or something, right? Mm-hmm. So it's, like, right getting up to that thing. Because
it's higher stakes.
Because it's higher stakes, and I also think that it's
a point of no return that doesn't involve showing the wolf.
But basically. I also think it's even more. It's beyond the visual. It's beyond the stakes. It's, you want Ginger, who's one of the other main characters, to keep acting during the climb. Like, I think it was much more interesting when you were having these two characters play off of each other than her facing off with a fake wolf.
Although, like, you do lose the whole scene of the guy getting slammed against the other side of the door while they're in the closet.
Yeah.
And I think that
could have just been the last, like, 5-10 minutes of the...
Well, that's what I'm saying. I think that they I think did need to make her turn into a wolf, but they shouldn't have shown it as prevalently.
And that, because I also just felt like that whole, like, stage, like, that whole set piece was a long... Like, we talked about how it was cool that they were going between the finished part of the basement and the unfinished part of the basement. But honestly, I feel like some of that should have maybe happened when she wasn't a wolf yet, because it just dragged. That scene was long.
I thought it was interesting that Ginger wanted Bridget to turn into a wolf with her, and that only lasted for a minute.
Yeah, it was
I think there should have been more of that. I think it could have been like Ginger chasing her around in that basement, trying to get that to happen, and being like she killed Sam.
Yeah.
The reason she did it is she just wanted to start a new life with Bridget.
Yeah. And,
you know, she's just like, forget about him, even though Bridget wasn't interested in him.
I think thematically, one of the biggest holes is they didn't really call out enough on Ginger's selfishness. Mm-hmm. I mean, the mom says, you don't have to be, you know, tied to the wrist or whatever, which is not a saying. It's tied to the hip.
Tacked to the hip.
Yeah. And all those things like, make your own decisions and all that. And yes, we do have Bridget finally doing a little bit of that, but it still is, you know, she's my most important person. Yeah. They don't really say like, maybe she is just a bad person and maybe she's taking your sister down with her. Yeah. Because I think like she is obviously shown to be selfish and be the selfish sister.
Yes and no, because I don't think they did enough of that before she was bitten. Because once she's bitten, I feel like her personality is kind of out the window. Mm-hmm. Like, it's hard to be like, this is her versus her under duress, or her craze, she snapped.
But you have the line, you know, no, you didn't say you would die for me, you say you die with me just because you had nothing better to do. Yeah. So I think there definitely is canon that yes, she is the selfish sister, and it wasn't like she cared for her sister as much as it was she assumed and wanted her to be down at whatever level she was on.
Because it was always safe and easy for Ginger to be the weird one. And the reason I say that is because even when Ginger was weird, and like pre-bitten, boys still asked her out. People were still interested in her.
She was the pretty sister, basically.
Yeah, she was the pretty sister. She just wasn't interested in anything else.
Yeah.
Whereas I think Bridget, just for survival, latched onto her sister.
Yeah.
Because she was the weird one. She was the awkward one. She wasn't quite as cute. And so she did whatever her sister did. And followed her, and it wasn't as easy for her.
But I do feel like we're filling in a lot of blanks that the movie could have covered in more interesting detail.
Yeah.
I do think one scene that we haven't talked about yet that I do think sort of fits in with all this stuff, but also is just an interesting coming of age part, is their first big fight when Ginger doesn't want to believe it's werewolfism yet, and it sort of uses that as a way of talking about a younger sister being jealous of the other one growing up and moving on and focusing on boys or whatever over her.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like the movie itself was a little conflicted on where it wanted to go with a lot of things.
And
it was an indie movie, so they probably didn't have much time or budget to sort all those things out.
Well, yeah, so I think I heard that they filmed the whole thing in 6 weeks or something. So
that is pretty quick.
That's pretty fast.
The mom just doesn't know how to interact with her daughters in a variety of ways. Each decision she makes is bad. She makes her daughter a frickin' bleeding strawberry shortcake because she finally, to celebrate her period. Don't do that. Don't do that.
Also, Mookie, don't do that.
And, she talks to Bridget about how she should talk to Ginger, which is stupid for a variety of reasons. One, you're the mom.
You don't ask the younger sister for advice on how to talk to the older sister.
Yeah, exactly, because you're going to have to talk to Bridget about this eventually. Bridget hasn't gotten her period yet. Yeah. You also haven't figured out that your daughter has a tail yet. You suspect your daughter's probably murdered someone.
That's later.
Yeah, I know, but she suspects that her daughter's murdered someone, and I don't know. It's
a surreal world. Yeah. That's the point. Like, the characters are not supposed to be believable. She's supposed to be crazy. Like,
yeah,
and you're supposed to understand that the family is screwed up.
So that's like the mom's issues. The nurse she didn't listen to the girls. She didn't take their concerns seriously.
And she was also just way too cheery about the whole thing.
Yeah, she looked like she was a character out of We Happy Few.
And the dad is just inept, as always.
Yeah, the dad is the silent ape who's just like, well, this isn't my place to talk about.
I feel like I should do like a video essay about all the inept dads and how dads are portrayed in general. Because it's not very nice.
It is kind of weird that it's just like, well, part of it is that it plays on the stereotype of like, oh, men don't know how to take care of their kids. And, like, when they finally do, oh, that's so nice of them that they're babysitting the children that they brought into this world.
I think
and those kind of things.
It's a caricature on stoicism to an extent.
Yeah.
And it's changing that to not caring means not knowing, and then making that being goofy.
Well, so there's a whole other level that I feel like, which is, and maybe it doesn't exactly apply to this dad, but I feel like a big trope that I think of is sort of like, there's the man-child's dad and then the shrewish wife. And the wife is the one who, like, actually does everything right, but, like, she's not likable because she's constantly nagging the fun dad. And so then neither of them are actually good examples, because the men are... It's not just that men can't be good parents, it's that they can't grow up. And that's, and I actually think it's interesting here that there's so much sort of slung at Sam as being this, like, oh, all men are the same. He just wants to have sex with you. He just wants to have sex with virgins or whatever. Which I'm not sure if you're supposed to like actually see that as true or not.
Yeah, because he didn't do anything bad.
He never does anything bad in the whole movie. So it's like, well, that's not really great.
Which I also do think is a writing weakness.
If we're going with the Red Riding Hood thing, he's
the hunter.
Yeah, the hunter, the lumberjack.
Huntsman.
Yeah. And that's another good point. Like, you can draw a lot of parallels to Red Riding Hood in that way as well.
Yeah.
And And I think it is a weakness in his character design that he doesn't do wrong. He kind of is this Van Helsing character. He's the huntsman character. He just comes in, saves the day, gets murdered without...
he has his teenage vices. Like, he's a drug dealer.
Smoking and he's a drug dealer, but like...
And he does get taken in by Ginger a little bit.
But then very quickly overcomes it and overcomes it with sort of
gusto,
bravado, And then he comes back and he's like hits it with a shovel. Yeah. So he's still...
I think you're being a little bit harsh because he also dies. It's not like he's like the hero with
I know. But what I mean is I'm not saying he's the hero of the story, but I'm saying for the part he plays, he has a certain hero archetype. Yeah. And yes, he dies, and that does make it more complicated.
I do like that Bridget's not saved by him. Ginger's not saved at all. Yeah. And that, Bridget's kind of the tragic hero.
Yeah. Is Bridget...
The reason I say Bridget is the tragic hero is because Bridget says multiple times to Ginger, when Ginger's thinking about killing herself, or when Ginger's like close to the edge and things like that. Yeah. Don't leave me here alone. I'm as good as dead, or I'd rather be dead. You told me you wouldn't leave me alone. We'd leave together. All that kind of thing. And then it ends in a really interesting way, and you can even talk about the cinematography with this. So what it reminds me of, when Ginger dies in the wolf form and Bridget lays over her dead body and is sobbing. Yeah. It reminds me of Romeo and Juliet. I don't know if that's really where they were going with it.
I think there's a certain feeling. I mean, obviously, there's a whole suicide thing on top of it. That's a theme throughout the whole movie. Yeah. But I think the question, I think it's supposed to leave you on a question of she looks at the vial to cure herself, but she doesn't do it, but she still could. So the question is she just taking in the mourning or the death of her sister, or is she like...
Don't forget, you gotta leave that ambiguity open for those sequels.
Yeah, which I'm wondering... So none of us have seen the sequels. I'm wondering I wonder if they had planned on there being sequels from the get-go.
I mean, they knew it was gonna be such a box office smash.
I think it did do okay for given the house.
I've never even heard of it before, so...
Yeah, I mean, again, it's Canadian.
At the time, it was doing okay.
Yes.
I'm full of it.
I think, personally, I don't have a huge issue with the sort of ambiguous ending. I think the shot is nice, and I like how the sort of Romeo and Juliet thing of her lying there with her.
Yeah, because I think they did always have, like, a...
weirdly sexual connection.
Yeah.
I mean, they completely went into it in the school hallway.
What happened there exactly?
She said, I feel like I'm barely even related to you anymore.
Yeah. Because of how much she changed, and then and she could have passed it on to her.
Yeah. So there definitely was a sexual connection between the sisters at that moment.
Which reminds me of something that I like that you said when we were watching, which is the whole idea of so many of the shots were just on them. And it was like so close on them together. And not really showing their surroundings.
It was just about their world.
A lot of the interactions when they were going through the world were closer than you would normally do. Yeah. Like if they were they never would show the cashier when they're doing a transaction at the store. They showed adults sometimes, but if only very selectively. Well, most of the time they didn't at all.
Were there almost no establishing shots?
No, it's just a lot of it was just close up on the sisters and close up on the characters.
Because we were supposed to see the world the way that the sisters saw the world.
Yeah. I get, and it could be the budget. There was a certain style of the shooting that just if they were shooting in a rush. Oh, what do we get? Oh, we got one of stars. But I think that it was actually very interesting as a coming of age that you were so intimately close. With the sisters, and also there was very awkward shots as well of the sisters also very intimately close even before they sexualized it.
But so something that you felt was missing, I remember you said about the ending.
So to me, there was one important scene missing. So we're talking about Bridget being the tragic hero. Well, what is her tragedy? Her tragedy is not that her sister died. Her tragedy was being left alone. So what I'm missing is, I would have been okay with, her bleeding out over the body of the dead wolf sister, and that leaves the ambiguity for a sequel or not. But what I'm missing is her laying there, staying on that moment, then her getting up, walking through the wreckage of the basement, seeing the body strewn about, walking up the stairs, walking up the destroyed like living room, kitchen, out into the street and kind of just into the world and being like, now what? Because that is her tragedy. If she is left alone, she doesn't have a sister, she doesn't have what the hell's Sam?
Yeah. What you're saying about having her sort of walk off, it wouldn't necessarily be in their budget, but having a shot of like a crane shot or like a drone shot,
Just like
having
away.
like seeing her from above, like in this suburban setting, which was so frightening to her, just being normal or whatever,
to
and, like,
isolate her and make her small.
Yeah, I think
and
that
that's
could've been
basically
kinda
what I
cool.
want. Because I think it just ended kind of abruptly and it didn't warrant it. But also to focus on what her tragedy, what her horror is, and then make her alone and small.
Well, I mean, so I see that point, and I think it's a really good point. But I think you could also argue that the tragedy is that she more than anything wanted to save her sister, and ultimately she's the one who killed her.
And that's fine.
So,
but I just think like that this was missing that little punctuation at the end. What is the thing that makes it speak closer to the metaphor and then move on from the metaphor? Yes, she killed her sister, but she also stranded herself.
Yeah, and the thing is, I think that ultimately where I think this movie sort of fails is that it just like, here's our allegorical idea. Werewolfism is like puberty, and it doesn't carry it through to the, like, there's no allegory at the end about how werewolfism kills your sister. It's like, there has to be...
growing up and growing different tears your relationships apart sometimes.
I just think that the best versions of these kinds of stories, the allegory makes sense all the way through.
Comes full circle.
Yeah. Now, I do want to ask as a sort of ending sort of question, what kind of movie do you consider this? Because it's hard to call it a horror movie. I don't think it's necessarily... I mean, there are horror moments, and it's also not even really a slasher movie because barely any people die until like the very end. So it's kind of just like a Halloween movie.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a horror themed surrealism movie.
Okay.
It's like, to an extent, it's like Beetlejuice, right? It's horror themed. It's not scary per se.
Yeah.
It's macabre.
It's about it being in this surreal universe.
Yeah.
So it's sort of a mood piece, as it all comes down to.
Yeah.
I know that you said ending question, but I did actually remind me I had a question.
Yep.
And I don't necessarily have an answer, but do you guys wish Bridget got with Sam in any way?
No.
Again, so I mean, I was thinking that I thought it would be interesting if she had been able to get up and go scratch Sam and he could heal.
As like a team or as romantic partners?
Well, so then heal him, then they cure each other, whatever, and then they go off into the world having experienced this together. I don't think it would have made sense for them to like make out.
And then they had to become hunters of the night.
Yeah, well, like just like have them go off together, having experienced this thing, and then leave room for a sequel when she gets a little bit older, and then maybe it slowly in sequels becomes something else. I think as is, there's a number of things in this movie where I think they like kind of just left things dangling. Where the fact that they had that girl specifically call him out as someone who just wants to be with virgins, like.
And then they did nothing with it.
Is that true?
Yeah.
He was a perfect gentleman to Bridget and even says, like, I don't see you that way. So ultimately, is there any romantic connection? I don't even know. Are we supposed to think Bridget likes him?
Is it supposed to be that, because Bridget hasn't gotten her period.
She can't even think of people like that.
She can't think of people like that, but also just she hasn't, attracted anyone. She hasn't become a woman yet. And I don't know, her pheromones haven't left her body yet.
Well, and I think you mentioned earlier sort of the archetype of the virgin character. And this is actually somewhat unique, and it's not a prepubescent character. So I feel like it's almost like she's innocent for her prepubescence. It's not even necessary that she's a virgin.
Right.
It's like...
She's not even entered the field.
Yeah, she's not fertile. She's not even, like, worth, like, trying for. Because, like, they did vaguely... bring up the idea of, pregnancy also because...
She's ovulating!
Well, yeah, so when Ginger is about to have sex with Jason for the first time, when she drives off in the car, Bridget tells him that she's ovulating because she's fucking watching her cycle in the calendar
like
from the tampon box. So she knows when her sister's ovulating.
Yep.
And,
who doesn't?
What? and Ginger didn't use protection. And so like they kind of like play with that idea for a bit, but it doesn't. But again, it doesn't go anywhere. Well, except for the fact that she infected him, so it's an STD. So I guess that could have, condoms protect you from werewolfism, kids. I don't know where I'm going with that now.
So I have a few other questions. So the one thing I did actually just remember I wanted to ask you guys about is how did you feel about the sexualizing of the actress within the sort of message that they were telling? Do you think that they went too far with it? Do you think that... I mean, because I think you think about like the tail thing, right? To me, the tail was specifically included just so that we could see more of her in her underwear.
But I do think that is important, whether it's objectifying the actress or not.
Yeah.
We can get to that in stage 2. Stage 1, I think, is I do think that is important in a coming-of-age tale that is about this sort of like puberty becoming sexualized. I think without that, you don't have the introspective as the viewer, like, I'm watching this, I'm understanding what's happening. So I do think you kind of need that to really do a piece like this all the way.
What do you think, Caitlin?
But
I'm... as always, torn. Because when we first discover the tale, when Bridget does, when the audience does, Bridget is going over to, like, check. So Bridget knows why she's doing what she's doing to, like, when Ginger's sleeping and she goes to, like, kind of pull back her underwear a bit. But, like, me watching, I'm like, what is she doing? What's going on right now? And then we see the tail, and I'm fucking freaked out. And like, can't even think about...
And it is grotesque.
I can't really think about the sexualization because I'm so... freaked out about what's actually like happening in the shot that I almost think that it's like doing the opposite of what you normally like. It's
normal
not
objectification.
It's not sexualizing her in a way. I'm not saying it's purely not sexualizing her, but in a way it's not.
It's a juxtaposition because it's like that's a good that's almost Hitchcockian, right? It's like the suspense, the building up is the sexualization, and the pullback is the repulsion. It's grotesque. It's revolting, and so you have that juxtaposed, and especially because we're talking about sexualization and then shame of changing body. I think that is a very important theme.
I mean, I think that's a great point with that particular scene, but to me, that's not the only scene. But on a personal level, I don't think this movie goes too far down the hypersexualizing objectification.
But other movies do.
Other movies do, but I still think it's worth noting given what they were saying in the movie about how women are treated this way and that way once they hit puberty, and then the movie itself is kind of doing the same thing.
But then you still have Bridget, and actually there's like zero of that with Bridget. So think about that. I think it is, again, like they're foils. So you can show and do things, that doesn't mean you're supporting it. Because you have Ginger, and then you have Bridget, and even though like the closest thing to that is like when they're calling Bridget a slut, but she hasn't done anything. And then she's saying the janitor is looking down her shirt, but what she's doing, she's wearing like a high t-shirt and like a jacket, so he's like, he's not. So it's like teasing, so you still have the female lead who's not at all that way, and the metaphor of her not being on her period yet. So I think it holds up.
I still think there's some iffiness to me where it's like certain choices, like the scene where she's getting the belly button ring, right? She didn't need to be in her underwear for that scene.
Well, I think that was also metaphoric because I think that it was sort of like the orgasmic sort of agony of her going like this and clutching her bed. That was definitely like, So I think, again, very intentional. I don't think it was like, oh, this is just a sexy shot or whatever. It was supposed to be representative of that.
So now that we've gone through my 17 last questions, let's just end out. I want to rank every story that we do on this show. So right now it's a little silly because it's just ranking Wonder Years versus Ginger Snaps. But eventually,
I wonder who's in the lead.
But eventually we're going to have an interesting, complicated list of to balance things out. And it's good that we have 3 people because we can vote on it. But I think we can all agree here that Wonder Years is superior to Ginger Snaps. So right now, Wonder Years is number 1.
If you disagree with us, I really want you to write in the comments.
Yes, please do. And speaking of which, so this is the end of our video. If you want to participate in future videos, you can do so by commenting down below. Let us know what you think of Ginger Snaps, Wonder Years, whatever else you want us to watch.
You can also comment above, but we won't see it.
That's true.
You just like write in the URL bar what you think.
You can
see where it brings you. Or if you have another coming of age story that you want us to watch, tear apart, etc.
Fall asleep while we watch it. You can also tweet at us at doingokvideo or email us at doingokvideo@gmail.com.
Let us know there what your favorite S adjectives are.
Yeah. All right, guys. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.